Welcome to BizTalk in Davos, the annual meeting of the wealthy, the powerful, the thought leaders and the decision makers. The mood this year on the economy seems to be somewhat more positive than in 2019. Can we trust that? Would growth snowball, or would we be hit by an avalanche of negative surprises? Global economic growth may nudge up in 2020, according to the World Bank. That's after a shaky 2019 with a tariff war and Brexit delays eating into growth.
I think what we're seeing right now is a reasonably robust global economy. So we know we had a slowdown in China, which had a material impact on the rest of Asia and markets outside of the U.S. Now, we know that the U.S. has been a relatively strong economic performer, but it's pretty late in the economic cycle. And so we can see a little bit of softening in the U.S. as some of the fiscal boost that came from the tax cuts from a couple of years ago, as that effect starts to recede. And as China actually has stabilized at a slightly lower growth rate, but still very robust, China remains a major contributor to world growth. And that clearly is benefiting the rest of the Asian region. I must say that in aggregate, the world loses as tariffs go up and trade tensions increase and uncertainty is persistent. But we know that in other parts of Asia, there have been some economies that have performed relatively well on the back of migrating supply chains. So yeah, we look around the world and say, in 2020, barring some event, all of which we could imagine what they could be, but there's some external event, that could be a pretty good year.
Despite the silver lining, clouds hang over the global economy. Geopolitical friction and piles of debt. A fresh blow came from the novel coronavirus outbreak at the beginning of 2020, which is expected to trim global growth by 0.1 to 0.3 percentage points.
I see the World Health Organization is already in discussion, and the government of China has responded now. I believe the travel restrictions on residents from the area in which the virus is seen to have had the greatest impact. But certainly we all should work together, and I think we shouldn't react in fear. We need to just ensure we take all the steps necessary to ensure that the virus does not spread. And then, of course, we must do the science to ensure that we identify what it is and find the clinical remedies to it.
Emerging economies are forecast to see growth pick up slightly. But South Africa had its outlook cut by the World Bank to 0.9%. Economists cite policy uncertainty as the main bottleneck.
We have to get back to growth that allows us to create jobs in South Africa. I think we still have a great deal of promise in our economy. There are sectors that we may need to direct more resources toward of the scarce resources that we have. I think the correct decisions have been made around tourism, around improving beneficiation and innovation within the mining sector. I think agriculture and a focus on increased exports, the conversations we've had with a number of countries, and now China opening up to our beef. I was in the UK recently, spoke to my colleagues about South Africa's citrus industry and the opportunities there. So more trade, greater attention to promising sectors, investment in areas that will provide us with growth, provision of financial services to a wider variety of countries on the African continent. So let's use our strengths to help the country to be successful.
2020 is a historical moment for African trade. July 1st is when the Continental Free Trade Agreement kicks off, making it the largest free trade zone since the start of the World Trade Organization.
My colleague, Minister Patel, has been working with his colleagues, ministers of trade on the continent, and they're looking at all the aspects that are related to implementation. The date of July 1 for the kickoff has been set, and I hope, since we will be in the chair of the African Union, that deadline will be met. A lot of the interlocutors we engaged with here are fully aware of the Continental Free Trade Area. So clear interest in Africa enhancing trade within the continent, linking up with the world in a far more organized fashion as an integrated economy.
In Europe and Central Asia, the picture is a tad firmer. Turkey's growth is seen at 3% in 2020, if commodity prices stabilize and euro area growth continues.
The results of 2019 was pretty good. In the 2020 will be much better than expected worldwide. As you know that the worldwide economy, because of the protectionist policies and the uncertainties, Brexit situations, and some situation of the Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and also the some protests in Lebanon, in France, and Latin America, everywhere. And the IMF also expectation pretty go down for the growth of the global economy. And the WTO expectation for the trade growth also really dropped down. They had to revise several times. Under these circumstances, Turkey was successful indeed.
An unignorable trend is the rise of the Middle East and North Africa, or MENA, a region with massive populations and promise, but has underperformed in the past. Can social reforms unleash productivity and give growth a jolt? How does it overcome fragmentation and underinvestment?
We're seeing a big growth in Egypt, as well as in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The region has gone through a few years of, I would say, limited growth. I think growth is coming back. We're seeing the IMF is projecting basically 50% more growth in Saudi Arabia. The fastest growing economy in the region is Egypt, with 5.5% growth in 2019. A lot of the resources that the region is endowed with could be a great source of wealth for the region if we are able to integrate better, work together as partners rather than work together as rivals, and benefit from the great relationship that the region has with China, as well as with other big blocs in the region, with ASEAN, with the EU, and with the US. So we're very well positioned as a region that has about 600 million people. That's 8.4% of the population, but only contributes 3.6% of global GDP. So we really have a lot to actually to do in order to get to what I would say is the average globally. And I think the root cause of that is the fragmentation in the region into small economies. The region currently has a big understanding and awareness of the importance of increasing private sector contribution to GDP. There is room for business and there is room for politics. Let's preserve the room for business and not make it actually, not make it disappear by actually the overall geopolitical issues that exist into the region.
The newly upgraded CGTN website offers optimized coverage of China and international affairs, as well as distinct voices from around the globe. Be the first to know the biggest political news and discover the background to the major decisions. Decode China with a different perspective and get a better understanding of how China sees the world. Go beyond the news with sharp opinions on the events shaping today's world and reveal a China you have never seen before. Listen to entrepreneurs for in-depth analysis of the economy and touch the pulse of new technology via our hands-on videos. Travel back in time with CGTN to learn about China's past and immerse yourself in Chinese culture to discover the stories behind Kung Fu. Get the latest news on Chinese lifestyle, including travel, sports, and nature. Regular productions including Ask China put high-ranking officials on the spot, while C-Lab presents new ways of storytelling via cutting-edge technologies, and Global Stringer delivers unique videos from China and beyond. Take a look at the world from a different angle. See the difference.
Just days into 2020, the death of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a US drone attack made headlines around the world, stoking fears of a third world war. As the worries fade out, how does the global business community assess the potential risks of geopolitics in the Middle East and elsewhere?
It has certainly been quite active, I would say, in the past, in the early days of the year. We have seen something that we have not seen before, so there is kind of an escalation. But we've also seen quite, I would say, contained responses and reactions. I think both parties and the region stakeholders want to get to, I would say, a positive outcome one way or the other. We hope that the region is moving more into stability, and that's going to bring people more into a reasonable stand in terms of finding ways to build, I would say, a future that is cohesive and sustainable, to go back to the World Economic Forum theme for 2020. We need more cohesiveness in the region, and we need also more stability and sustainability in the region.
I think everybody wants to be, everyone wants to see a stable region. I think in the region, it benefits everybody, and I cannot comment personally on the geopolitics and on that. But I think from the discussions we had with everybody wants to see stable region, which brings investments and it's good for everybody, and nobody benefits from otherwise.
In the adjacent African continent, peace talks in South Sudan, conflicts in Libya are still issues that dominate the agenda.
It would demand a lot of work for us to have positive outcomes. I believe we will focus on peace in South Sudan and getting the agreement implemented. I think South Africa, and particularly as AU chair, should work with Sudan to make its democracy something that is sustainable. So where we might give partnership, collaboration, and assistance, as AU or South Africa, we should be ready to do so. I think Libya stands out as a very difficult conflict for the continent, with many proxy actors now on the stage of Libya. We need to resolve that issue because it's impacting not just on the Libyan people, but on the Sahel region as well. So there are many, hotspots on the continent that I believe we need to address.
More optimistic observers believe geopolitical tensions are easing, at least in the short term.
I think that the geopolitics in the short term have actually improved. I was so pleased to see a phase one, even if it's not a perfect deal, even if there's a lot of stuff, hard stuff left to work through, but at least we're going down in tension rather than up and creating a foundation to build on. It's not as big a foundation as we might want, but it is a foundation. And I think similarly in USMCA was positive. Brexit, at least it's a clear decision that can be implemented. And my sense is overall, in the short term, the geopolitical tensions come down. But what hasn't changed is the level of overall uncertainty and navigating today's world.
And now that Brexit has happened, many countries are looking to explore opportunities with the UK, which is planning to open 10 free ports by 2021.
We just had a very interesting UK-Africa summit, and the UK was speaking with a very strong voice, very confident voice, and indicating it sees Africa as an important trade partner, and that they now wish to talk much more about trade with the African continent. And from our perspective, the UK is already one of our very big export destinations. We'd like to see expansion in that. There are areas, for example, in the horse equine industry, where we'd like to do more trade of our horses, but in the agricultural sector we're doing very well. Again, areas that may have been the domain of rules of the EU may open up for us. These opportunities have already been explored by Minister Patel and the team in Treasury. So already we have a framework which is, I believe, going to be the basis of a future partnership arrangement.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
I see a country on the move.
There's my opportunity.
Is it good to change so fast?
Yes, but it's a challenge.
We have one foot in the future.
But we never forget our past.
We need to talk to one another.
And listen.
More than 1 billion voices telling their stories. Rediscovering China, only on CGTN. Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
For now, the war drums may have stopped beating on the China-US trade front. But there's no shortage of discussion about decoupling, the possibility of a splinter net, and how to deal with it. China's tech giant's investments in US startups fell more than 80% last year against 2018, according to PitchBook. If an alternative tech sphere emerges from distrust, is it disastrous or actually beneficial as it prevents monopolization?
Right now, the popular theory is that if the China and US tech iron curtain, as it were, gets higher, then both countries building its own technological systems might actually turn out to be good for the rest of the world because it provides an alternative.
I think as we look at US-China relations, we will speak about the era of 1979 to 2019. And there was a huge amount of integration and coupling as a result of that kind of unconscious ability to globalize together. And the world became more prosperous and more peaceful because of it. But I think when you have the two pillars of the global economy, the two big engines, decoupling in a way, there will be more sand in the gears. I don't think it'll be a positive for growth, and I don't think that it'll be a positive for peace. There is no big problem in the world that cannot be fixed or ameliorated in a really substantive way if US and China work together. And so when we work together, we can make a fist. And when we don't work together, nothing big and hard happens. And all the problems we have to deal with today are big and hard.
These protectionist policies do not serve to anybody, not for the developing countries, of course not for the developed country as well. So it is going worse if we do on this way. So we have to keep WTO more stronger positions, and we have to behind fair, free, and rule-based trade system, and we have to support together.
From last year, U.S.-China trade war, the tariff negotiation has a serious impact to our, especially cargo business. So we transport semiconductor to China, and we transport smartphone to U.S. mainland. So these cargo business has damage from, but you know, U.S. and China agreed first step agreement, so that is good news for us, yes.
We're glad that we have now the trade agreement between China and the U.S. I think that also will help a lot in terms of the cooling down the mood in terms of trade. And so I think eventually I think the wise voices will prevail, I think, and we will hopefully see a growth, the one we expect globally, and we want to see that happening.
You know, you can see on the horizon the kind of contours of decoupling. There's no doubt about that. Is that in everyone's business? No. Interest? No, it's not. So we think that whilst you can see clearly outlined that that's potential, we're working very hard to see if we can, I suppose, shape a future where the digital platform remains whole. In the unfortunate event that there is a decoupling, then clearly one of the roles of the ICC is this independent, not-for-profit, for-purpose organisation with a very strong governance is actually to try and support interoperability. But you know, that's a way down the track. That's a way down the track.
The ground is shifting for companies and industries. They have to think hard about whether they localize more, broaden their business, or deepen investments in core technologies.
Trade war has prompted us to, I think many in the business sector in China to realize how vulnerable our overall system is in the technology front. For example, in software, in database software, most of the large systems in China use Oracle. And but we are at a stage that it's not inconceivable that Oracle one day could withhold its license based on restrictions from the U.S. government. And nobody in the software sector wanted to compete with Oracle on database simply because it's already too large as the established industry standard. But when faced with the prospect that you may not be able to use it, you have to find an alternative. You know, hence, you know, our focus in those sectors, finding Chinese alternatives.
So does this mean that you're diminishing your focus outside of China and turning inwards?
Certainly, we'll be more cautious in terms of investment in the U.S. But Europe and other places, I think, is really case by case. For example, in the case of Japan, you know, where we have a presence for almost 15 years now, and we've been doing very well. And you know, given the improvement in the bilateral relationships, and we're also considering potentially looking deeper in, you know, Southeast Asia and so on and so forth as well.
Hopefully they're going to get better. You know, the world will be better off, and the US and China will be better off with an ever-improving relationship and a better trade deal. But in the end, we make everything for China in China and everything for the US in the US. So the impact on us of trade is more the effect on the overall sentiment and the overall economy, because we truly are local in each country.
As everything is being politicized these days.
It could, but I think consumers are kind of discriminating and understanding what brands are with them, what brands are, even if they come from somewhere else, investing locally, creating jobs locally, engaging with consumers locally, and even governments are too. People are looking for people to kind of work together and build better businesses, better economies, but also a better society and a better environment.
China and the U.S. are our two biggest markets, and we've been in China for a long time. We have, as you said, we have local manufacturers, we have local teams there, and we're very much see our business in China as for China. I think is interesting about China is just the innovative capacity of China, and the ability to come up with innovations is pretty extraordinary. And we like to say that if you want to see the future, go to China. And we've seen that in my world, certainly in the brand building world, which flipped from analog TV to digital almost overnight, with the likes of Alibaba, and Jingdong, and WeChat, and TikTok, and Little Red Book, and all those others. You know, that's just completely transformed how we do brand building. And they're local. Those are local China companies who are successfully innovating and making that business really strong. And then what we have chosen to do is just make sure that, you know, do what they want in China, and things will go well.
You're watching our BizTalk special in Davos. Well, as global wealth climbs, so is inequality. It's climbing. How do we deal with these issues? Join us for the next episode of our Davos special, as we focus on the environment, on ecology, on society and technology. I'm Jelaine Davos for CGTN's BizTalk.